and welcome to another episode of Schiffbauer Rocks. I'm really excited today. I have a friend, colleague, and a mentor to an extent, really, of mine, Bobby Gillespie. So, thank you for coming up here today, man.
Well, thank you for the opportunity to come to the beautiful White Rose City.
So
right?
you got it right. Yeah.
Yeah. It's been a while since I've been up in New York, but thanks for having me.
What's your favorite thing about York? Before we get into it.
My favorite thing about York. You know, there's a up and coming scrappy attitude here. Mm-hmm. Lots of breweries popping up, lots of, kind of shaking off the rust. So that's interesting to me. I'm an East Coast guy, so like the whole East Coast city grit vibe is very appealing to me. But I think York, I'm from Philly, but I live in Baltimore. Philly I'd say is a tier 2 city, big city, but not like New York, Chicago. Baltimore, I'd say tier 3. York would be like a tier 4.
I actually say a tier 4, believe it or not.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if tier 4 is an actual thing, but it would be a tier 4 if it was a tier 4.
Because, I don't even know there's a downtown. There's a main street, but is there, a downtown?
You got a block and a couple streets. That's about it, honestly.
There's some cool architecture, coming in off 83. There's lots of cool buildings there coming this way. But, it's just got the whole East Coast vibes, even though it's southwestern Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
It still has the East Coast city.
I'm about to say, young and scrappy. I've never heard describe that. I think the Economic Alliance needs a higher Propr. Now, the more that I think about it, of course, I'll ask you what you really do. But Bob, for those out there, has been in the creative branding space 20 plus years. Has his own agency, Propr, that really works to transform brands and businesses when it comes from a messaging and overall execution standpoint.
Strategy through execution, all aligned towards growth and operations.
Okay.
So not just pretty stuff. You can go anywhere for that. But pretty stuff, it's going to work. Whatever your goals and opportunities are as a business, that's what we focus on. That's the strategy part. Mm-hmm. The deep dive into who the hell are you? Why should anybody care? What do you care about? What do your customers care about? And let's align those things so, growth becomes a lot easier to achieve.
So I'm biased. That's what I believe branding to be. But I think branding as a whole, there's a lot of misconceptions on it. People think it's just maybe a logo and a sticker that you place out there, and that's who I am. But that's not the case at all.
Nah, branding is something of a struggle for me because the term has so many different definitions based on people's experience and point of view. So we define it right away. It's your reputation.
Okay.
So you talk about a company's messaging, their marketing, their design stuff, their logo, their typefaces, colors, their building, whatever they have, that is an expression of their brand. And before you can decide whether that expression of the brand is appropriate or accurate or helping, you have to dig in and define what the hell the brand's all about.
Wow.
What's our mission and purpose? Who are we?
Why do you actually exist to serve anybody, rather?
Right, and we for worse, I don't say for better or worse. For worse, society has kind of trained entrepreneurs and business leaders to just focus on being transactional.
Okay. Yeah.
And of course, business has to make money.
It's an end product of it where I'm doing this and I get this.
It's our job, right? It's our career and things like that. But beyond making money, what is your purpose? In a lot of these mega corporations, it's infinite growth. So they exist to make money and they'll exploit everything they can possible to make more money. And that sucks. And no one should look at that as an example of what to do. nor is an example of what you can achieve. So you shouldn't even strive for it because there's only a few companies that get to that size. Mm-hmm. And when you think about it in your heart, like in your gut, you know that it's wrong. It's not helping. It's hurting, even despite the conveniences or what the perceived value that you get from an Amazon or a Google or Facebook. Like they're causing much more harm.
Yeah.
So but we think about the brand we're building in a small or mid-market company. The data is absolutely clear. People want to engage with brands that have a clear purpose.
Mm-hmm.
Now let's unpack that. The purpose doesn't have to be something noble, like, Patagonia's perceived noble purpose, right? Like they're trying to do well, but some of it's sleight of hand. They may not be doing
what they should be doing.
It's a marketing tactic at a point.
I mean, we're all hypocrites, but like companies of that scale, like Patagonia, there's a lot of hypocrisy that goes behind the scenes.
Sure, and the guy who owns it's a billionaire. So like, there's no reason a billionaire should exist when you're driving past people that have nothing, right? So like, the hoarding of that wealth is a symptom of somebody doing something that's not right, not healthy, not contributing their best to society. Like, I was driving back we go to the Outer Banks a couple of times a year for vacation, which is great, except for the 6-hour drive can be taxing. But we were driving back roads last year, and we're crossing the Potomac somewhere, and who knows where, and we're going over this bridge, and on the other side of, they were going south, we were going north. I think that's where we're going. We're coming home. And there was, a homeless man who's clearly in distress, pushing a cart, just completely like broken human, looked awful, as a Ferrari drove by. And it's just like, it's just unbelievable, the visual of that. And I'm just like, it just like stuck with me, even though that was like 3 years ago. Like, I'll never forget that image.
The juxtaposition.
And that's really like a perfect example of like, why do you need that much? When so many, you look at CEO salaries, like 300 times people say, like, why?
And I think it leads into purpose. So why do you exist as a company? Why do you exist as
right,
a
not
brand?
just, like, of course, a business needs to make money, right? That's part of the
equation.
The equation, right?
But like, how do you get there?
But your purpose that people want
makes
to
sense.
align with is, it could just be, like, our purpose at Propr is to help our clients be self-sufficient and empowered to grow with or without us.
And you embody that because you just said it right off the rip.
So, like, and when I'm asking questions to my team,
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, should we do this? Or like, why, like, how should we handle the situation? They throw that at me. Well, if our purpose is to empower our clients to be self-sufficient, to scale and grow with or without us, then we have to do that. And I'm like, you're right.
Right. Even if...
So, like, clarifying that, it just gives you so much, it really makes your leaders and everybody on your team lead, because you have a common goal. Mm-hmm. You have a shared mission. So instead of saying foolish things like, we're a family at our company. Well,
I hate that.
Well, I hate it too, because families are dysfunctional. Families deal with each other because we share blood.
By default.
And, like, what do we accomplish together as a family? Nothing.
Those are the kind of companies where they burn out their employees and all they get is
it's just bullshit.
A Panera Bread gift card at the end of the year.
Yeah. Jelly of the month, right?
Yeah.
So you're talk about your company as a team, right? Like,
collectively, yes.
We're on a shared mission.
Mm-hmm.
We each have clear roles. We know how our roles contribute to success in our mission. We get compensated appropriately. Like, there's more fulfillment than frustration. When you're with your family and you're trying to do something, how frustrating is it? It could be off the freaking charts.
Oh, yeah, no.
But we don't want that frustration in our companies. We want fulfillment. So when we have a shared mission, so like empowering, making self-sufficient and all those things that we're trying to accomplish for our clients, it's like That's our guiding light. That's our North Star. And that's how we evaluate every decision. So it builds into our core values. These are the building blocks of defining your purpose and your organization. But not just, some people might be like, oh, we have our core values. Like, all right, well, is everybody making decisions based on them? And oftentimes not, because somebody could be a high performer bringing in a lot of money. And they're a complete asshole treating people like shit and that completely contradicting their values, but money. So it's okay.
Yeah, it's like there's companies where like, we are customer focused, but then you got that top performer who's just like a shark.
Yeah.
And like clients leave because he's a shark. But
don't even say you're customer focused, right? And that gets down to sort of the personality of your brand. Like
let's dive into this. This is good.
Like you have to put it into the context of what your brand is, who your brand is, right? And we use a fun exercise as part of defining sort of the tone of voice and the brand personality. And your listeners could do it at home. Was defined
we'll drop a link.
By what famous person, real or fiction, live or dead, could embody the brand, right? Mm-hmm. When you close your eyes and you think about your message and your design and your copywriting and all these things, like who is that person? Right, for us, it's Anthony Bourdain. And
it makes so much sense, me knowing you and Propr.
Yeah, because it's so, like we're great at what we do, but we're also real people. And, and a reminder, it's okay to not be okay, right? Like, so, like, but it's about, for him, it was the experience, the story, right? Plus the food and drink, the conversation. Mm-hmm. Like, all that makes a real relationship.
Correct.
And, for a long time, the company, I really focused on, I really pushed at, like, we're all about the relationship. We're all about the relationship. And as I continued to grow and improve, which is, the term Kaizen applies to software development and things like that, we apply it to our personal growth.
I take a similar philosophy. I think it's very important where you have that continuous growth. It's where am I going?
Yeah. So, like, if you're not improving, what are you doing? You're staying still.
You're decaying, essentially.
And as an anonymous person once said, if you sit in the middle of the road, eventually you'll be run over. Yeah. So I don't want to get run over. But like I realized that a relationship is the result. It's a result of results. So I like that. What value are we bringing in our clients? So that makes it even more critical for us to make sure we're bringing in clients that we can truly help, that want to be helped, that don't want to just have somebody, build the brand that they want. We're building the brand that's really there.
Resonant
already exists.
Interesting, okay.
So like that's the essence of it. That's at the core of it. Exposing the core of it. Like in my book, I was
about to pull this out. Shameless plug. Build your brand. Like you give a shit.
Like you give a shit. Like you
feel
care.
like I'm Oprah right now, but this is amazing. So,
it's not under your chair. So it's on Amazon.
It was a really good read. I mean, I read the majority of it this past week, just as a refresher going into this recording with you, Bob.
It's an interesting personal journey to write a book. It really is.
I could imagine this the process, and just me knowing you for several years now.
Speaking of vulnerability, man, putting yourself out there, like you make yourself. Like I've designed a million things, and but writing a book is a different level of exposure.
I would imagine like the intimacy too that went into it. Just like I'm going to tell this story, this experience where like I normally didn't talk about with people or share, but now I'm going to share it to provide some kind of guidance. And
learning from my, one of the catalysts for writing the book was, of course, I wanted to make my mom and parents proud. I wanted my wife and kids to be proud, and leading by example is important for me. But, where we are today is not the result of our own personal labor.
100%.
There's millions and billions of people that came before us over hundreds of thousands of years that shared ideas and stories and experiences that led us to be able to do things like have a podcast.
Yeah.
Or even the printed word. Or smoke a stogie and drink a scotch or an Irish whiskey.
Yeah.
like that required sharing of information, right? So like this whole open source mindset of information is, I'm a Gen Xer. I think that like part of my experience growing up under the boot of the boomers, where they hoard information and gatekeep it to establish a sense of
authority, essentially.
Authority,
almost.
But self-importance.
I was about to say supremacy.
I want to give it away, right? Because I rather contribute ideas that help people. And it comes back to our core purpose at Propr. And I think my core purpose of any business I was a part of was I'm trying to help, right? I'm trying to have better outcomes. I'm trying to improve things. Mm-hmm. And even sharing these ideas on a podcast. Hopefully someone finds this compelling and maybe inspirational, and they do something different that changes their lives or their family's lives or their employees' lives or their customers' lives in a positive fashion. That sounds like freaking frou-frou as hell, but like that's what makes me feel good.
So I'll tell you an example, not to hijack your point, but to add relevance to it. I got a DM on Instagram yesterday from someone who follows me. I don't follow him because I don't know him. I'm like, hey, I saw your guest appearance on this podcast, this Cardinal Cast. It was this guy who like does copywriting, like in the online space. I hopped on his podcast. It was literally 12 months ago. He's like, I watched it. I want to reach out to you. I'm thinking about, building like a local focus agency rather than just cold emailing people, actually getting out in my community and building relationships. Like, can you provide like some kind of guidance from it? I'm like, I recorded this podcast almost a year ago, and I had this gentleman reaching out to me who I had no idea existed other than him just following me on social media, giving an ask like that, which was profound to me.
Just think about like how he had to steal. It was a guy.
Yeah.
How he had to steel himself to take that bold move.
Now I'm going to ask this guy who I have no idea, he doesn't know me.
Like, props to him for having the guts to do that, right? Like, that's tough, man. But like, there was something about what you were conveying, like your personality, your words, the way you talk, what you talked about, that was inviting to him and empowering to him, and that's amazing. Like,
it's really cool
that's
for
amazing
me.
Stuff. Yeah.
Like going back to your book, sharing like essentially your knowledge and your experiences to like just benefit the world, or just even a sense of community. Whoever might pick it up, if it's one person, and run with it to better themselves and better the people around them. I think it's very important, just as a human being, regardless if we're in the branding or marketing space, whatever we do, how do we empower others and give back over time?
There's also another part of it, right? It's always multifaceted. So, like, getting your point of view out there, having a point of view, whether, and I've been called, which makes me laugh, provocative, polarizing. And like when I was called polarizing, I was like, what the fuck? Like, I'm like, oh, yeah, I am. Because I believe what I believe, and I'm not steadfast on that. I'm steadfast on establishing points of view and not being shy about sharing them and defending what I think needs to be defended. But like, I'm not going to be polarizing just to be polarizing. I'm standing up for something I believe in. And so like it became a compliment. But like leading with that is really a great way to do business, because you're going to attract people that appeals to.
From even a personality standpoint.
Yeah, like think about it. Like, we're client services, so we work with people, right? And we do provide products and services, depends on how you define them. But like we want to work with people that appreciate us. And I want to appreciate them. I want to appreciate what they're trying to accomplish. I want them to respect us, and we want to earn that. I want them to trust us, and we're going to earn that. And it starts with top down. Like, I need to be trustworthy and respectable so that they can be, and they can give the opportunity to be that way with me. People that, like, I don't want to work with, I want to put out content, and I'm writing and putting videos besides the book, out there
where they disqualify themselves.
Yes, because I don't want to tell them no or get into
this
a situation
thing where like they want to put all this money up and like we really want to work with you, but it's like
they're a disaster, right? They they're the antithesis of our mission. They're the antithesis of our values. Mm-hmm. It won't work out.
No.
The dollar amount won't make it work out because their pain is going to come at a more significant cost. But also the ability to deliver is severely compromised because you don't share values and purpose, right? So like it's just not going to work.
And I've noticed in those scenarios, from my perspective, it's just those expectations are misaligned at the onset, regardless if you establish clear ones.
Yep.
It's just they don't fully communicate what they expect.
Mm-hmm.
And then it comes out, it rolls out over time, and it usually it gets ugly one way or another.
Yeah. And like, and what I've learned is that every client is unique, of course, but like how you engage with them, you shouldn't force them into a retainer if it's a project. And these are things I'm learning over the year. 8.5 years in business, like you're always learning.
Well, that's the beauty of growth. It's just...
But I'm like, you know what? That should have been a project, not a retainer, because towards the end it got a little weird, and we should have been.
We didn't need to do it,
and we already delivered everything. So like getting into that phase of work, they really weren't interested or open to it or willing to participate in it. So we weren't going to be successful anyway. So we should have ended it.
It's not even like you oversold it. That was just the model at the time.
Yeah, right, and.
You went in with good intentions, and it wasn't optimized. Like you said, it got funky one way or another.
Yeah. And then, really, when you kind of post-mortem it, there's a one fresh in my mind from last year. Amazing project, but at the end it got super weird. All we miss is the money. And, like, that's how you know.
That's what it's time to cut the cord.
Yeah.
If that's it. It's just like, okay. We're done.
What do we miss about? And I asked the team because it was a shock when it ended. I was like, "What are we going to miss with working with them?" Of course, we wanted to accomplish more, but like no one could mention anything. They're actually relieved, and I'm like, "Boom!"
I had something similar just this week at the point of recording. Client on a retainer. I literally asked my team. I have Steven, our project coordinator. Shout out to Steven. I'm just like, hey. As we continue to scale out this client between now and the end of the year, are you comfortable taking on more responsibility with, like, the middle management role, which he's done with other clients? He's like, Paul, to be honest with you, I'm not because of this reason. And I went to John, my advertiser. He's like, his sentiment is relevant. I've even thought the same thing, me being a pretty heavy point of contact on the initial engagement.
Right. And
then his expectations were completely misaligned. And even as the owner, I didn't have to get my team's buy-in, but they're like the two particularly on the project were like, no. Like, we're unsure. We don't necessarily think this is a good fit for us, but like as a whole, I'm like, done. Cutting it off.
Yeah, man. Props to you for like creating the culture where that is not just allowed, but done.
Yeah.
Where they're giving you that feedback. Because we owning the company, we have a very different relationship with the business.
Correct. That
we can't force anybody to even come close to it. Or, even the most senior employee, like they're an employee, and they weren't a founder. They didn't, it wasn't blood, sweat, and tears, and all the stuff that we're trying to accomplish with a business as the entrepreneur, like. Feeling comfortable to say, I don't want to. And that's not giving like license to people who just don't want to work and stuff like that.
Yeah,
but I don't think they would.
It was relevant to the situation.
Yeah, but it's like, can we be successful? Can you be successful? Right? Because that's really what our job is. To quote Eisenhower, it's like our job as leaders is to put people in a position to be successful.
Yeah, best positions as possible.
So, like, if we're not doing that, we're failing as leaders.
Correct.
And that's why when we start with any branding exercise or any big project that involves, like, really important, critical parts of growing and marketing and business, like, we want to know what they're all about. Because that exercise I started before I started Propr, because all the graphic designers out there, and even any kind of creative career, like the client saying I don't like it or
Why?
getting annoyed by it is irrelevant.
Yeah.
And that happened to me I was a creative director of another agency, and
Mention it in your book.
it's in the book. Stories in the book. Let's get an anecdote.
It's a good one.
So we were redesigning a enterprise e-commerce website that sold like $3,000 espresso machines, and we identified our project manager was someone I worked with at another agency, and I pilfered him, as we do.
I love the term pilfer. My buddy Mike just put that in my vocabulary.
He's doing great now. He's up in New York, solid dude. Very clinical minded, great project manager, great kind of black and white success guy. So we're doing it the right way, right? And we're going through our process, and we presented the information architecture, the UX.
UX is like
user
related to the experience. Yes, for those out there.
Information architecture is how the content flows in a strategic fashion to give people information as they browse your website, but it leads to strategic points that are conversions or whatever. So like it's how the content flows. And then user experience is how that content is set up.
It's the best way I've actually heard someone describe that, by the way.
And then
in our space.
User interface is what it looks like.
Yeah, that's a top shelf tip if we would make this like a separate clip.
Yeah, I think
that was good.
Yeah, and that's just the way I look at it. So when you're thinking about what the process is to create a publication, a book, a website, it's the same. It's just different nomenclature. So we get to the point where we're presenting the design comps. And this is like, geez, what is this, 2012? So like responsive web design always existed, but like it started to become more popular and mainstream, and I was pushing hard for it for all of our clients. Mm-hmm. And there was mobile website, if you go throwback a decade or more ago, mobile websites for your phone, and then a desktop website.
Yeah, you had to almost click to go to the mobile back in the day.
What a disaster, right? So like,
I'm glad I came up more on the tail end of that.
Well, I was pushing hard from where I could influence on just having one website that just adapted to
work
the
for
device. Like one website, one thing you manage, one thing you pay for, not two or three or whatever, an app, right? So anyway, we're dealing directly with the CEO, and we were in our conference room and we're presenting, I never met them in person, never even seen their faces, which is fine. But we're presenting on screen on like, that thing, that microphone speaker thing in the middle of the table.
I've had a couple meetings like that.
And there's a new person on the call.
That's always my favorite, like the monkey wrench.
So we're like, but we who's a decision maker, who's the influence? Like we identify like who's what's the decision making process, who's on the project team. This person came out of nowhere. Well, this person was offended by our work. How do you get offended by?
Yeah, what justifies you being offended? Is it a personal thing or is it actually
personal.
A professional thing?
It was personal.
Usually it is personal.
So it turns out she was the owner's wife, and she designed a website that we were blowing the fuck up. And we weren't like critical of it. We were past like the assessment. Months past it.
Yeah.
Like we're in like this is the direction to go in to get the results you want. And the call ended really awkwardly, and we're like looking at each other. In stomps the owner of the agency, and he's furious, and he's lashing out at us, and we're like, I was just like, chill, daddy, chill, right? And I was like, we did everything right. I'm fighting for what's right. I'm standing up. We're not gonna get beat here. We're not gonna get yelled at by a colleague.
No, you have to have
adults don't do that.
No, exactly.
So like that thwarted that emotional outburst by him. And I was like, we did everything right. So instead of really just sort of doubling down on that, I said, how can I prevent this from ever happening again? And I just started to just do a ton of research and reading and exploring and trial and error to create a discovery, and that was sort of the term that's popular in agencies, of learning about the client. Because what my goal was is, and I was clear about it to the team, my team, I'm going to use their words against them. And
it's not even you being malicious, but sometimes you need to do that to protect the integrity of your work.
I need them, because like I'm going to document it. That was the difference. Like they may have said it in a conversation or in passing, but I'm going to document
I've had to do that in the past myself.
That's so we can point to it. So, but what happened was that the process was so thorough and enjoyable. And we tried so many iterations. We sent them over a questionnaire, or I did an interview, or I did a hybrid, or you know. But then it became sort of workshop format. And that's what we still do today. And what I saw was a lot of these people didn't know who their customer was, what their customer cared about, what their business was all about, what their business purpose was, what their values were, what the personality of the brand was. And without those things, the people creating the brand, the designing the systems and the identities and the websites, like we were just working towards a yes. We were trying to get the client to say yes, approve this so we can get paid and launch it and move on. I don't want that. I'm not working to convince somebody or to placate somebody's whims and ego. Plenty of agencies can do that.
Most of them do that.
We want results, right? So like people were talking about like what's the results associated with a brand? Well, the results are everything you're doing to grow works better and is integrated. So it's earning you the right reputation every day. So like that's the outcome. So when a 60-year-old white male who's the CEO of a wedding company that is like a connector between all these different vendors says, I don't like the website.
That's actually
hilarious. Well, who gives a shit?
Because I had one of those clients that fits that
because it's 20 to 35-year-old, mostly women.
Yeah.
That this brand should appeal to.
It's not you.
It ain't you.
Your brand is bigger than you, and it shouldn't be you.
Right. So I needed to get that information and say, like, when they came back with, I don't like it, I would essentially say, it ain't for you. Who cares? This is about what's best for your brand and what's best for your future customer. And that's the question that everybody should be asking. It takes a lot of guts. Speaking of guts, it takes a ton of guts to be able to ask that question. But it takes even more clarity to answer it. Because that's why no one wants to ask it. Because they have no fucking clue. And they're afraid to answer because they're like, oh, we're going to leave money on the table if we do tighten up our positioning and our customer. You can still take on any business you want, but you can only market so much, right? It takes so much resources to market. Like, well, let's not try to market like the sun. Let's try to market like a laser and focus on these people, these industries, these verticals, whatever, and get traction there and then scale it, right? So, like, that's what I wanted. And I have not had that problem since. Really?
Wow. That's profound. Building off that, I just want to ask, you're talking about like kind of essentially operationalizing this process. Can you just give a little more feedback to those out there? How would that look like?
Yeah. Well, let's just kind of reverse engineer it. Like, what are companies doing to market themselves? What are they doing for business dev? What's their sales process look like? What's their vision for the company from the CEO down? What's their opportunities? What's their growth goals? What are their goals for recruitment? What are their goals all around? Where are they struggling the most? Okay, now we know all these things. You know, they want to be acquired in 3 years. They're struggling recruiting top talent. They're and keeping top talent. They're struggling because they embed I'm talking about a former client. They're struggling because they embed their team within larger corporations, and they're having trouble creating a culture of excellence in a dysfunctional culture. Okay, all right, now we know. But most agencies will be like, I don't fucking know what to do with that. But we're looking at it like these are problems, and believe it or not, ladies and gentlemen, these are consistent problems that everybody's experiencing, so don't feel like they're yours alone. We all kind of have those common pains. So what we looked at is like, okay, well, let's really hone in and clarify who it is you are, who it is you work for, what it is you do, how you do it, and what is the expectation that the client, these Fortune 2000 customers they had, what's the expectation when this team is embedded in your company? What should you expect? And how that is flexible between working within a corporation in Pittsburgh versus Mississippi. Because it's different, right? It's different culturally. So like how does our purpose and values flex and be agile to remain who we are despite like this not being so acceptable here, but there it is. So really it was defining what their core values are. And like it's not 11 core values. It's 3.5.
Yeah, probably 4 or 5 max, I would imagine.
Five, if you can you need to convince me.
Okay, yeah. I feel like most people can't convince themselves.
And I'm like, hell no. Because think about it, right? Like, what are we able to hold in our short-term memory? It's, our cognitive overload comes at, 7 to 9 options. So, like, think about when you go to a diner. There's 30 pages. You get the Western Almond every time.
It's the worst fucking menu design concept, but every diner.
Or you go to a bar that has 100 beers on tap.
It's just too much. It's overload.
You get the pale ale.
Yeah, no, by default, that's actually me. Like, I just go to
I just don't know, right?
Yeah.
And like, because that's cognitive overload. So you think about how that cognitive load theory applies to decision making. Well, once you go to overload, the ability to make a decision is extremely challenging, and people actually not make a decision. So when you think about like how many, for example, on your website, how many things should you have in your menu? 5. And if you need to go more than that, fine. They're under sub-pages.
Justify it at that point then.
3, ideally. 5. If you're going up to 7, you're starting to push the limit.
Yeah, why you think you need those potential items?
But then you think about not just your menu, if you have like a slider in your banner, that has 5
that redirects to this.
Well, guess what? They're not seeing any of that.
No, because it's just, like you said, over.
They're probably going to scroll right past all that.
They really are coming to you potentially for 1 or 2 things.
Right. Well, to comment on that, you think about website users. There's 2 types of users. It's the scenic route or the downtown bypass.
Yeah,
the scenic route wants to explore, browse,
get more information,
see the trees and the waterfall. The downtown bypass knows what they want, so you got to account for both of them. You got to give them the ability to buy now or to browse, right? And like if you're adding complexity to that, you're hurting their mission, their purpose on your website, what they're trying to achieve. Right? How did we get into this rabbit hole?
It typically happens on this podcast. We talked about the Express Machine client.
Oh, so going back to that, it's so much more than going back to the big data analytics client. So understanding the goals of the organization, the challenges of the organization, and having a creative partner who's going to help them problem solve around that, not just create the next marketing campaign or come up with the most delightful, whimsical campaign slogan. That's meaningless stuff. That is gimmicks. That's throwing shit at the wall and hoping it works. And when you do that, it's not what's the worst that can happen. It's what's the best that can happen. What's the best thing that's going to happen by throwing gimmicks?
It's not a strategy.
Really nothing.
It's not a strategy.
It might work.
It's almost
once.
When people hope things are going to work out, hope is not a strategy.
Nah, it's not.
But as we wrap up here,
Where's that from?
Hope is not a strategy.
Yeah,
I've heard it from I think actually some boomer, believe it or not, but it's relevant in this sense.
Yeah, I shared that somewhere recently because and that comes down to like the essence of it, right? Like with creative problem solving, that's what marketing is. That's what building brands is. That's what being an entrepreneur is. You're creating something out of nothing, right? But when you have no parameters around what's appropriate, there's an infinite number of possible solutions. So like with an infinite number of possible solutions, how do you find the right one? You can't. That's too freaking many.
Yeah.
Right? But with the parameters in place about what's appropriate for us, and that's really what we're defining, the values and the personality and the message and the design. Like this is what we are. This is who we are. That's how we're able to evaluate, is this design good for this brand? Is this messaging good for this brand? Does it say the right thing? Will it say the right thing to the right people? Will inspire action? That is creativity with parameters, which equals innovation. So tightening up and say, this is the space we operate in, we could be innovative.
At that point.
But when you're like, this is us.
You can't be specialized at that point then at all.
No, and then you're relying on the resources of something like the sun to cast your message on every possible thing.
And you hope and pray it won't work.
Right, but how many brands out there have the resources of the sun? None. Apple. Right?
That's it.
Basically
they got like $1 trillion in cash or something like that.
Yeah, so like they don't need to. So a lot of, especially the B2B brands, look at Apple as the example of what to do.
But it's not the right
they're
model.
the true outlier.
It's not a right model for them.
No.
Because it's not them. It's not their brand. But I know Marty's single for last call a little bit ago, but I want to interrupt you because you were killing it with the wisdom. I want to bring up one particular anecdote you gave in this book that I thought was most profound.
All right.
Reading it. It's when you got a beer with a gentleman who worked at like an events company, and he was looking for like some like design work, and he's like, "Well, I did this logo like 16 years ago or something like that, and he's successful now. I contributed to his success," and he thought his value was justified just the basis on just what he designed without any intention. Right. And you walked him back like you were essentially asked a legitimate critique, and you got offended on it because he couldn't justify his position on why what he designed was valuable. And I thought it was really profound because I feel like a lot
of repeatable.
Correct.
That was the big thing. Like, how can you show me that you can do this again?
And he got offended by that. Yeah. I think even outside the design space,
offended's not the right word. Butthurt.
Yeah, he asked you essentially, do we need to step outside and talk about this?
And he almost got his ass beat.
Yeah, then you reeled him in. You're like, no, we're staying right here. We're talking about it.
No, I said, how dare you?
Yes, that was the words.
How dare you? I'm taking my time
to provide this. Like, I'm trying to
help you.
Get feedback from your position.
All he wanted from me was do work.
Check, yeah.
And I'm like, you're not showing me that you can do work.
No.
Show me that you can do work. Create a process. Talk about your process. Talk about how you're able
to...
And your process isn't something that becomes dogma. It's something that is a starting point. You know, the process, our brand workshop is not what it was when the proto workshop was created when I worked at that other agency, nor is it what it was when I started the company. Mm-hmm. And I don't think it's really what it was last year.
Oh, I believe it.
So it's evolving, improving.
Like about 3 years ago, myself.
Yeah, that's right. Mm-hmm. You did. when I would do the group ones.
Yeah, so around like 2020-ish, or 2019, I think right before COVID.
2019, yeah.
That's crazy, longer than 3 years.
Oh, yeah, I forgot we did that.
That was fun.
Yeah. I should do the group one again. It's been a minute.
The group ones, I got a lot of value out of for those, and I thought did too, from just a pure experiential standpoint, because you also saw other perspectives too of other folks, what they were going through.
Which is so helpful, right? And that's really what your agency partner should be providing, is a collaborative support role in addition to your team that offers a perspective that is outside of, even me, like talking with other creative people, like they bring immense value to the conversation because it's not my point of view or perspective. Yeah. And they'll say things to me and I'm like, I have never thought of that.
No,
like our web developer, the web developer we work with, I love him, he's awesome. Like he said, I was venting to him about business because we're not in a recession, people, by the way. Be bold with your marketing. Stop being scared.
Oh, I saw something, we were talking about it pre-camera. It was literally from a book about if we are in, hypothetically, a recession, or you are in a downtime, even if it isn't quote-unquote recession, you should invest more for positioning within reason.
Oh, yeah.
So it's just, that's an opportunity.
Because other people are going to, like, you can build brand equity, if nothing else, or maintain your brand equity. That was like familiarity. People know you're still in business.
When the majority of people, like, present and create scarcity, whatever, then, like, cutting back their marketing dollars and advertising dollars, that's an opportunity for you to
think about it like this, right? Visual. So, like, you're competing with, your chief competitor is the stogie freehand, and you have a little bit more brand equity, right? It's a big pie. There's plenty of business for everybody. So you're here. You stop marketing. What's going to happen is, and if they continue, what has happened is you're going to shift places, or worse. And you may think, oh, that's not so bad.
Oh, it's very bad.
Well, to claw back this much is not just investing again. The investment is exponentially higher because they're going to keep investing. So you're chasing them. You have to invest so much more to catch them. 2 to 3
times at minimum.
And it's not like you're going to be taking away their business. You could, right? It's a growth opportunity when your competitors kind of disappear. Mm-hmm. You need to remind your customers that you're still there. At the very least, we're still here doing business, right? So and that's top of mind. That's brand equity. That's brand recall. All the things like, oh, I don't need this service right now. But when I do need it, the brands that I feel the most relationship and relatability with are the ones I'm going to turn to. And before I started my own company, I used that as my strategy for those who are out there hustling and trying to get jobs in agencies and whatnot. Be the best candidate possible for the job, right? But be in front of them. Mm-hmm. Have them know who you are.
Lead it.
So when the time comes, like, I need a designer, I need a writer, I need a video guy, you already know who they are. You already have a relationship. And I have tons of colleagues in the industry that we've tried to work together dozens of times, and we haven't. But when the time comes,
you can pull them out. If it
like,
makes sense.
Holler, like, Dan, I got something. And he sends referrals my way. And it's a healthy relationship, right? And there's really nothing in it other than, like, I want to see them do well. They want to see me do well. We want to have beers together.
It's a one-win.
But the same relationship you can have with your customers. It's not going to be so intimate. But just let them know you're doing business still. Like, if you got to cut it back for whatever reason, just stay top of mind.
Keep in touch with them still.
Keep some touch points going, because your competition may get an influx of cash or may rearrange their organizational structure and say, we're going to use this as an opportunity to dominate. Well, you don't know what they're doing, so don't act on fear, but you have to be proactive.
If you would say anything as we wrap up, as like a final tidbit, or you want to share, what would it be here today?
Realness.
Okay.
Just keep it real, right? Like, be yourself. let your business be itself. Don't focus on the shit that doesn't matter. Truly define what matters most, right? And if you're a greedy person and all you want to do is make as much money and dominate as possible, then I don't agree with that. But don't bullshit people around that. But I would recommend not being so shallow. Like, there's a exercise we do that everybody can do. Is like, this is the West Philly and me coming out. Like, this could be like hypothetical. But what would make you go out to the streets and fight? What would you fight for?
That's a big question. But
And that's taking your head out of the equation, because our head's going to fuck with us and lie and trick us and make us,
but like in your heart,
lizard brain.
What are you going out there and putting your fucking sleeves up for?
What gets you fired up, right? And like that energy and emotion is going to be infectious to people, right? So like a lot of that is like, this is what we won't stand for this. Like, this is unacceptable. This is non-negotiable. But you also need to flip it and say, like, what must we have every time? Like, for client services, like, it's respect. It's no bullshit, right? Like, no, like, creepy sexual harassment stuff. Like, nothing like that. Any of that bullshit like that. Like, unacceptable. Fired. Right.
Done.
And we've had clients where, my team is all women but me. And like, I'm like, you tell me.
If anything comes up that's
is this dude crossing the line?
Yeah.
Because they're a local client, I'll go over there.
Yeah,
and like, that's a little bit extreme, West Philly. But like, but you need to think about that. Right. And you need to make that clear to everybody and say, like, we won't accept this stuff. And you act fast on it. So like companies that talk about their core values and they allow somebody who's a big producer to have carte blanche to be a complete asshole. And, that's very short-sighted. That eventually is going to hurt your brand. That is a major flaw in your brand's foundation. And when your foundation is flawed, eventually it's going to lead to damage. And what we don't know is how catastrophic that damage is going to be. But allowing someone to just go rogue and do whatever they want because they're making you money, it shows that your values are meaningless.
Yeah, you're not going to fight for those values at the end of the day.
So like defining that stuff, committing to it, standing by it, having your people's back, having your customers back, doing what's right. Like, sadly, those are great ways to differentiate. And then using that clarity around what's best for the brand to create a visual experience, a visual representation, campaigns that are authentic. That's going to just perpetuate that reputation in everybody's mind. Because one thing that people, this will be the last piece.
Let me get your thoughts on generational wealth too. I'm kidding. Go ahead. That was a side conversation we had.
I was ranting and raving earlier.
Oh, shit.
So, like, people aren't going to remember the last experience they had with your company, your brand, right? They're going to remember how it made you feel, how it made them feel. So you think about the impact that has, right? Comcast. Like, everyone's like, fuck Comcast, for good reason. So, like, even on a smaller scale, if someone's like, hey, Paulie, I'm looking for a cigar shop in York, where we're at.
Yeah, Casa Cigars.
So, shout out, right? So, like, he would say, oh, yo, Casa Cigars, their money. That's all it takes for me to become a customer.
That's a reputation. I'm saying this is why I go
if
here.
Paulie said, oh, I'm at fucking Joe Schmo's cigar shop on the other side of town. Should I check this place? Dude, hell no. I don't need anything else. And what's going to happen is someone goes, yo, Bobby G, is there a good cigar shop in York? Yeah, Costra. Done deal. Oh, but I'm by this place. Oh, hell no, I heard that place sucks.
Done.
Right? That perpetuates. So it's not that you had good service. It's not that you had a good logo. It's not your location. It's how you're making people feel and the reputation you're earning.
Bob, it's been a fucking pleasure.
All right, bro.
Thank you so much for coming up here and also being a byproduct of my success to date with the relationship we have.
I take no responsibility of that. It's all you, bro.
Success, though, it's even in your book. It's a byproduct of the people around us.
Yeah.
So, thank you for another stellar episode of Schiffbauer Rocks. We definitely went over the time, but it was well worth it. If we were at a bar, the owners would tell us get the fuck out.
I'm glad we recorded it because these conversations happen all the time and they just go into the ether.
That's why I do this, and cause to me, this is where you get the best conversations going.
Yeah, it's great.
This kind of format.
Yeah, long time coming. Appreciate it, man.
Absolutely. Well, hey, get his fucking book. We're gonna put a link in the bio and check out Propr if you really need some clarity on who you are as a brand and business. Take it easy.